For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas. Tensions between Ukraine and Russia intensified on Friday. The Ukrainian government claimed a Russian military convoy crossed into Ukrainian territory and that Ukrainian forces responded by firing shots. Russia denied that the event even took place, calling it some kind of fantasy. All week, tensions have mounted after Russia sent a convoy of humanitarian aid to help the eastern provinces, which are facing a humanitarian crisis following Ukrainian bombings. Kiev refused to allow the aid to enter. The Russian defense minister told his U.S. counterpart Friday that Russia is seriously concerned over NATO's increased activity near its borders. The Palestinian Interior Minister in Gaza accused Israel Friday of a cross-border shooting in violation of a truce that began Thursday. Israel denies the claim. The 5-day ceasefire has largely held, putting a pause to over a month of fighting in which almost 2,000 Palestinians have died. Our correspondent Noor Harazin is on the ground in Gaza.
The Gaza Strip, Palestine, such a densely populated area. Over 1.8 million people are living in just 360 square kilometers. Over the past 8 years, the Gaza Strip has suffered severe lack of fuel, 16 hours of electricity cut per day. The siege also affected the entering of the supplies in the Gaza Strip. And now with this latest Israeli operation on Gaza named Protective Edge, it's the third war in Gaza in less than 8 years now, and we are living the second day of the 5-day of the ceasefire. We witnessed busy streets, shops are open, fishermen went out to fish. We witnessed also people going out trying to spend some time with the family during this summer. For now, despite the pain and suffering and in the hearts of the Palestinian people are trying to survive and create hope and create happiness. The people on the ground right now are positive about the negotiations and the talks. They hope that in the next few days they're going to hear a positive statement coming out from a Palestinian official announcing a long-term truce, and not only a long-term truce, but a truce is gonna grant them their rights, such as lifting the siege, opening the borders, allowing the fishermen to fish till 12 nautical miles in the sea. So what we can say is that the people are positive. At the same time, we can say that the people are fearing the future because they fear that the Israeli side are gonna refuse some of the demands of Hamas and of the Palestinian people and bring them back to the operation.
And thanks again to Noor. In the latest sign of solidarity from Latin America, ambassadors from the ALBA countries met today to show their support for Palestine. The ambassadors of Bolivia, Ecuador, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela called for Israel to face a criminal trial in the international courts. The ambassadors also urged the international community to recognize Palestine as a country and a UN member. And to Cuba, where peace talks to end Colombia's 50-year civil war are currently focused on the conflict's victims. On Friday, a delegation of victims traveled to the island ahead of a major conference Saturday. With more, here's our correspondent in Colombia, Charles Parkinson.
At a press conference today here in Bogotá, the departure of the first group of victims set to appear at peace talks in Havana was announced. Now that's 12 of the 60 victims that were selected in total, the first of 5 groups. It was a big mix among the victims, but included in the 12 were 5 victims of the FARC, as well as victims of the state and victims of the paramilitaries. Now, none of the victims actually appeared at the press conference because they'd already left for Havana by then, but the panel that did appear to announce their departure stressed that the whole point of this was a huge mixture between the different regions and between the different perpetrators of the crimes against them, and that's what is intended to be seen in this group of 12.
Staying in Latin America, protesters from around Paraguay, mostly farmers and indigenous groups, demonstrated Friday outside the National Congress. The mobilization is part of 3 days of national protests, denouncing the first year of President Horacio Cartes. Cartes was elected last year in the first elections following the 2012 coup. And to the U.S. and Ferguson, Missouri, where police released the name of the officer who shot an unarmed black teenager dead last Friday. According to the department, Darren Wilson fired the shots that killed 18-year-old Michael Brown. On Friday, the family of Brown accused the police of character assassination of their son. The police department has released a video they claim shows Brown's involvement in a robbery prior to his encounter with police. However, the department has admitted that the officers who stopped Brown were unaware of the robbery. In the wake of a heavy-handed police response to protests, some U.S. lawmakers have questioned federal policies that provide civilian police departments with military equipment designed for war.
They're firing rubber bullets.
Meanwhile, in Iraq, Canada has announced it will send weapons to Kurdish fighters in the north of the country. This is the latest sign of increased Western military involvement in Iraq since the U.S. began a bombing campaign last week. President Obama has claimed the attacks are to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe. Thousands in Iraq continue to flee under pressure from ISIS.
Rising numbers of displaced people coming from Sinjar districts and Sinjar mountains have been crossing this pontoon behind me over the last 48 hours. According to the government of Kurdistan and the United Nations, more than 25,000 over the last 2-3 days have sought refuge and asylum in the Hook province, which is just ahead.
New figures show the European Union economy has stagnated during this year's second quarter. The region as a whole showed just a 0.2% growth. The German economy has contracted, while France has failed to show further growth for the second quarter in a row. Both are the European bloc's main economies. Meanwhile, Italy has entered its third recession since 2008. European economies are growing slower than China, the United States, or Japan. And finally, we go to sports. Argentina's new coach held his very first press conference today. Gerardo Martino was named coach of Argentina on Tuesday, replacing Alejandro Sabella. Sabella stepped down after the Argentinians suffered a 1-0 loss to Germany in July's World Cup final. Before becoming Argentina's new coach, Martino coached Spanish giants Barcelona. Martino has announced that he plans to recall striker Carlos Tevez, who was dropped for the World Cup. More on those and other stories at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great weekend.